Macedonia, but throughout the region, and focusing on this very crucial component. I'm saying also this because if the prospects for the integration in the future are more gloom and vague, I would say this would demotivate the political elites partially to pursue with the reform agenda, including the judiciary segment here, and the judicial culture may be the collateral damage of bilateral disputes in the region. Having said this, it is very crucial to address the gap between the formal processes, the horizontal restructuring of the judicial culture, and the informal cultural setting, the context in which practicing of judicial culture occurs. And this is why we as a consortium decided to start and design this project, because we deeply believe that through a process of kind of evolution, the judicial culture has to take, there must be an insight, a research insight and advocacy insight in what stands in the gap between these formal processes that come with EU integration and the informal practices that our judicial systems and the judicial culture in general inherit or have as their genuine dimension. We decided to focus on 4 dimensions of judicial culture. Our respected guest after me will talk more on these dimensions, but we decided to focus in the next 2 years on the role of judges in developing the law, in the judicial self-governance and post-socialist judicial culture, the role of higher courts in securing uniform application of law, and importance of judicial independence of individual judges. These dimensions are quite crucial in our opinion, and something we will investigate region-wise, Albania, Serbia, and North Macedonia. But we will also share our knowledge and findings and expertise, and we will collaborate with the other countries in the region, Western Balkan in general. So with hope that the key beneficiary or the target of this project and activity, this being the academies for judges and prosecutors or judicial councils in the region, will have enough resources, learning resources, teaching, training resources that will be incorporated in the processes of judicial training and practicing of judicial oversight further in the years to come. So I would like here to stop just to say thanks a lot to our partners, the Asser Institute from Netherlands, Judicial Research Center from Cyprus from Serbia, Albanian Legal and Territorial Research Initiative Altri from Albania, of course, and big thanks to the support by the Dutch Fund for Regional Partnership NFRP Matra program that supports this project. I have an honor here now to welcome our Minister for Justice, Mr. Bojan Maricic, and also His Excellency, the Ambassador of Kingdom of Netherlands in Macedonia, Dirk Jan Kop. I also forgot to mention at the beginning of my speech that there is a translation available. Sorry to say this now after I said my thing, but I hope you all comprehended my presentation. So in the interpretation panel, there is a translation provided in English, Macedonian, and Albanian. That is the globe icon on the right that says interpretation. So you can choose one of the preferred languages in which you would like to follow this event. And if you hear too loud the original sound in the background, you have option to mute the original audio in order to hear better. So without any further ado, I would give the floor to the Minister of Justice, Mr. Bojan Maricic, and also for the others that would like to follow this event. There is a live YouTube streaming at the moment of this conference, so the link will be available in the chat box on the right of your Zoom panel, and you can of course share this with all interest stakeholders that would like to participate in the conference. Good luck to everybody with this project. Once again, thanks for supporting this. And I hope that in the future we will have a fruitful cooperation between the partners and the judicial institutions in question, primarily here, as I said, academies for judges and prosecutors and judicial councils. Thank you very much, and I would now give the floor to Minister Bojan Maricic. Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marko. Dear friends, dear colleagues, all the familiar faces I can see. It's a great pleasure for me to speak to you today and to open this discussion. Mr. Ambassador, the Director of Academy of Judges and Prosecutors, and all the other participants. I will just say two things before I start delivering my speech. I will deliver it in Macedonian language, and it will be there will be a translation available for you. And also I will need to excuse myself because right after I deliver my speech, I will need to speak to another conference starting at 11:30. So I'm so sorry I couldn't stay till the end of the discussion, but it's a hectic agenda today. This is really important topic, and I'm glad to address today, and I'm also glad to see further on, to follow the results of your work, of your research, and the lessons learned that can be very useful for our system, judicial system, and for the rule of law system in general. Дозволете најнапред да поздравам оваа значајна соработка и овој проект кој што е во насока на детерминирање и анализа на состојбите во судската култура на Западен Балкан, која во крајна линија овозможува индикатори за владење на правото како предуслов за функционирање на правната држава. Особено ако ги имаме предвид последните одлуки на Унијата дека финансирањето на државите членки на Европската Унија нема да биде можно, односно ќе биде условено со степенот на почитување на владењето на правото, нешто што беше особено насочено кон Унгарија и Полска. Сметам дека е уште поважно станува оваа дискусија да остане отворена постојано и резултатите од таа дискусија да бидат спроведени и на ниво на политиките. Темата за судската култура и неформалниот кодекс на однесување е тема која буди постојан интерес во јавноста. Актуелна беше изминатиот период и на некој начин земајќи го отпочнувањето на преговорите на Северна Македонија со Европската Унија. Стратешката определба за зближување на неформалните практики до формалните процеси или законите на свој начин представува сршта или суштината на реформата на правосудниот систем во Северна Македонија, која се провлекува не само за време на мојот мандат, туку и долги години наназад. Ова е долга реформа која имала поголем број падови отколку успеси, за жал, но конечно можеме да кажеме дека имаме закони, имаме законска рамка која во голема мера се усогласени со стандардите на Европската Унија. Тоа е факт кој го потврди по повеќе наврати и Венецијанската комисија, но и Европската комисија во својот последен извештај за нашата земја. Сепак, неретко во домашната јавност се слушаат констатации дека и покрај тоа што Северна Македонија има добри закони во областа на правосудството и владењето на правото, дека е потребна подобра, посилна и подоследна имплементација на овие закони или доследно нивно спроведување. Механизмите за да се обезбеди судската независност и одговорност се поставени, останува институциите постојано и доследно да ги користат за секој поединечен случај. Ако законите се темелот на правосудството, судската пракса или културата на спроведување на принципите се неговата душа. За подобрување на состојбите во правосудството повеќе не треба да се огледуваме или да го бараме проблемот во законите, повеќе треба да се погрижиме тие да бидат спроведени, односно во квалитетот на кадрите кои што ќе го спроведуваат и во нивниот интегритет. И во нивниот интегритет како принцип или како одлика на судскиот и обвинителскиот кадар. Овде сакам да напоменам дека улогата на Министерството за правда и на владата не е да пресудува, да суди или да се меша во конкретни случаи. Меѓутоа, наш врвен интерес како влада е да постои еден изграден систем на правдата кој што ќе испорачува, ќе биде ефикасен, ќе биде одговорен и ќе биде транспарентен. На крајот на краиштата, крајната цел на тој систем е да ја има јавната доверба и таа јавна доверба да биде постојана и да биде на високо ниво. Намерите на филтрирањето во судството или да речам проверките на работата на судскиот кадар, како и во обвинителството, е пред се да се подготви тој кадар и да се поттикне на одговорност како најзначаен елемент на судската култура покрај независноста. Значи независноста и одговорноста се клучни елементи на судската култура. Процесот на филтрирање на судството и обвинителството меѓу останатото треба да ни покаже дали имаме сериозен проблем со неформалниот кодекс на однесување и како тоа може да се промени. Овој процес веќе го најавивме и очекуваме набрзо да објавиме одредена методологија, секако во диалог и во соработка и во спроведување на надлежните институции. Овој процес ќе го води Судскиот совет и Советот на јавни обвинители, а неговата цел е пред се да се зголеми довербата во правосудниот систем преку одвојување на судиите и обвинителите кои совесно и одговорно ја вршат својата работа и оние кои што не го прават тоа. Вистински предизвик за судската култура представува и модернизацијата на судството или во конкретен облик неговата дигитализација. Секогаш во сите области, меѓутоа во судството посебно сме сведоци на тоа, има извесен отпор кога се воведуваат новини во еден цврсто воспоставен систем кој што со децении функционира на определен начин. Ова особено важи кога хартијата треба да се замени со компјутер, а еден доказ за тоа е дека во време на вонредна состојба многу мал дел од судиите користеа видеоконференцијска врска за да продолжат со постапките, иако имаа можност тоа да го направат со уредбата која што со законска сила која што донесе владата во текот на вонредната состојба. Добро е што Европската унија ја препознава дигитализацијата и модернизацијата на судството како следен чекор и како битен чекор. Тоа имав можност и да се уверам лично во разговорите со еврокомесарот Вархелји и со еврокомесарката Јурова, како и со еврокомесарот Рейндерс. Сваќам дека модернизацијата и дигитализацијата на судството ќе биде важен аспект од вложувањето или помагањето на Европската унија на нашиот регион и на државите кандидатки, и тоа ќе биде секако дел и од реформите на нашиот правосуден систем. Предизвиците се големи и оттука од огромно значење е вашиот проект, бидејќи подлабоко ќе навлезе во анализата на овие различни аспекти во нашето обкружување, како во Северна Македонија, така и на целиот Западен Балкан. Затоа, за крај само би се заблагодарил за можноста да ви се обратам и ви посакувам плодна на тамошна дискусија и со голема желба за резултати кои што ќе ни помогнат и во практичното дефинирање и спроведување на политиките. Ви благодарам. Thank you so much.
Благодарам, министре, и ви благодарам за поддршката на овој проект. Секако се тоа и нашата визија за подобрување на култура немаше да биде возможна без поддршката од народот на Холандија и програмата Матра се разбира. Затоа би сакал да му дадам збор на неговата екселенција, амбасадорот на Холандија во Северна Македонија, Дирк Јанков. Да ви се обрати, амбасадоре, повелете.
Thank you, dear Mr. Troshansky, Your Excellency, Minister Maricic, directors of the Judicial Academies of North Macedonia, Professor Gabor Damjanovska from Serbia, Mr. Vujic, I hope I pronounced it well, from Albania, Mr. Rakipi, dear speakers and participants, dear friends. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you today at the kickoff of this conference, this online conference of the regional project Bridging the Gap between formal processes and informal practices that shape judicial culture in the Western Balkans, implemented by the Institute for Democracy, Societas Civilis in Skopje, the Judicial Research Center CEPRIS from Serbia, the Albanian Legal and Territorial Research Initiative from Albania, and the ASA Institute from the Netherlands. We are looking forward to this interesting project, which brings closer together the region and the Netherlands in an initiative to exchange knowledge and experiences which will strengthen the resilience of the justice sectors and accelerate the pace of change of the judicial culture in the Western Balkan countries. The region has gone through important reforms in the justice sector in the decades following the demise of communism. The Netherlands has been a long-standing partner in these reforms, and through different programs, we have supported the countries to promote and uphold democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. These values, if enshrined and respected in society, bring stability, security, and prosperity. Often for a country to be able fully to understand and implement them, a societal transformation is needed, a change in mentality. That is not very easy. After all, the countries in the world that are richest, healthiest, and happiest are not necessarily ruled by strong leaders, but by strong institutions. This project aims to further enhance transformative processes in the judicial sectors in the region and address outstanding gaps and sometimes prolonged practices which encroach upon the independence and the impartiality of the judiciary. Whether these practices are a matter of perception, legacy, or realistic obstructions in the manner justice is served, the result is diminished citizens' trust in the judiciary and trust in the institutions, in the equality before the law, in a system that is ruled by law, in the underlying element of democratic society, is the underlying element in democratic societies, which have growing economies, security, and allow for a satisfying standard of living. To restore that trust among the population is badly needed. Governments need to create an enabling environment by putting forward legislation, securing resources and infrastructure for these processes. And indeed, North Macedonia is an example of a country which has successfully followed a reform track in the justice sector in the past 3 years. It has adopted and amended key legislation which follows the recommendation of the Venice Commission and European standards. But in my language, we say, paper is patient. Now these efforts should be extended with committed and effective implementation. There is a role for a broader set of stakeholders in these processes, and the Netherlands remains a committed supporter of all of them. It is for judges fully to grasp their importance in securing uniform application of law, self-governance, and professional independence of each and every judge, which are the intrinsic elements of a European judicial culture. The judicial academies are to train the justice professionals in expert skills and values of integrity and impartiality. Academia and civil society are to analyze, evaluate, create knowledge to substantiate these processes, and regional and international exchange of expertise and good practices is to enhance these developments. All these joint efforts will unlock the untapped potential of this region and will bring it closer to the European Union. This may not always be easy and challenges may occur, but challenges have to be turned into opportunities. The European Union accession is a reality and decided by the European Council based on the merits of each country. Roadblocks, whatever form they take, must be removed with patience, diligence, and consideration of the complexities of accession. This includes the understanding that the sooner the reforms give sustainable results, European standards are embedded and the concerns in rule of law are diminished, the sooner the accession process will move along, and it will move along faster and stronger. I wish you success in your work, and I'm looking forward to the results of the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. With this statement, we finalize the welcoming remarks part of today's agenda. What follows is the keynote addresses of the three directors of academies for judicial academies or academies for judges and prosecutors in the countries that are involved in this project. I would like to welcome Ms. Natasha Gaber-Damjanovska, the director of the Academy of Judges and Prosecutors, Public Prosecutors Pavel Shatev from North Macedonia, Mr. Nenad Vujic from the Judicial Academy of Serbia, the director of Judicial Academy of Serbia, and Mr. Arben Rakipi, chairperson of the Academy in Albania. First and foremost, I would like to express our gratitude as a project consortium, as a team, that you endorsed and recognized the added value of this project. And I said at the beginning that you will be one of the main beneficiaries, but also I see these academies also as one of the key partners in the research endeavors we are going to undertake in the forthcoming 2 years, as during the workshops in each country concerned that are foreseen for the next period, workshops where the research design and the diving into the complexity of judicial culture in the region will happen. Your help and your contribution will be invaluable as well. So without further ado, I thank you once again, and I hope you'll have a wonderful and fruitful cooperation. And I will leave now the floor to Zoran Nechev, the project manager of this particular project and the head of the Center for EU Integration within the Institute for Democracy, who will moderate this and the next discussion session to take the floor. Zoran, please.
Okay, thank you, Marco, and thank you for this introduction. I don't have to introduce, obviously, the speakers. You have done that. For me, this is when the director paves the way for its employees. Just I wanted to come back to a few words that the ambassador mentioned, and which are also crucial for this project also, and that is the resilience of the institution, especially judicial institution, as many of the countries in the Western Balkans, as already mentioned in the latest strategy of the European Union, face certain elements in specific areas which are related to state capture. This is first. The second one is what I really liked in his speech was about the societal change these countries need to undergo, and the change of mentality, which is maybe the most difficult ones. That the rule of law needs to be enshrined in the society, and what we are seeing actually now in the European Union, and with the recent blockage by Hungary and Poland, exactly for the rule of law mechanism that will accompany the recovery fund and the EU budget. Obviously, rule of law is the most important thing that our countries need to enshrine, not only in its work, but enshrined in the society that we live in. And this is why it is very important that we're implementing this project. Western Balkan countries are working on rule of law reforms since the beginning of their accession processes, something that wasn't paid so much attention during the previous enlargement round in 2004. And obviously these are 3 of the countries which are actually blocking now the European budget, and enlargement process that ended 2007 with 2 countries, which one of them now is blocking our accession process, which is still under rule of law mechanism, which is something which is unique, and no other country, well, with the exception of Romania, there is no other country in the European Union which is under these cooperation and verification mechanisms. So this is important to mention in light of what is happening now in the European Union and what is happening now in our accession process. So I will just mention a few words about the objectives of the project. So the idea is to complement the European Union methodology, especially in the area of judicial culture. It has been mentioned as a specific term for the first time in this year enlargement package. That is also very important, as it is recognized by the European Commission as important. Changes in judicial culture occur incrementally, but it's above all that through education and training, it is possible to change the mentality or change the judicial culture, and thereby making the whole judicial system and the judges themselves more independent. So because of this, and we are having the three directors from North Macedonia, Albania, and Serbia present here today. Each one of them would have 10 minutes, and please respect the others and finish within the time frame given. The first speaker should have been Natasha Gabra-Damjanovska, but there was a request by Mr. Arben Rakipi, the director from Albania, to speak first, as he has other duties that he needs to conduct. So, Mr. Rakipi, the floor is yours, 10 minutes.
Ju falenderoj shumë zotin Neçe. Detyra vetme është që më presin studentët në 11:30 në klasë për mësime dhe më duhet të nxitoj. U falenderoj shumë për ftesën dhe për përfshirjen e Shkollës Magjistraturës së Shqipërisë në këtë projekt. Personalisht e kam parë si një prej mekanizmave që reforma e drejtësisë në Shqipëri do të arritë të zbatohet dhe të japë rezultatet e pritshme. Mendoj që projekti shtrihet në shumë element të prekshëm konkret, të cilat me siguri do të japin ndryshimet e kërkuara nga reforma në fjalë. Shqipëria këto vitet e fundit ka patur një zhvillim shumë të madh në fushën e drejtësisë. Reforma që u ndërmor duke filluar nga viti 2015 e këtej ishte e shtrirë në shumë komponent të strukturës gjyqësore në tërësi dhe pikë pari erdhi si nevojë publike për të rritur besimin e këtij të fundit tek drejtësia. Unë mendoj që reforma në Shqipëri nuk duhej ose nuk është konsideruar si piknisje për shkak të vullnetit politik. Sigurisht vullneti politik ishte deciziv në përfundimin e saj, por nevoja publike ishte më e madhe dhe më e rëndësishme se sa vullneti i shprehur nga Parlamenti i Shqipërisë. Të gjitha anketimet apo opinionet që publiku i gjerë jepte apo kishte për drejtësinë, për mënyrën se si ajo punonte në Shqipëri, ishin në thelbin e tyre parashtronin dhe shprehnin mungesë theksuar në ta. Kështu që mbi këtë bazë Parlamenti i Shqipërisë ka ngritur një grup të gjerë ekspertësh dhe përfundimisht miratoi një paketë mjaft të gjerë të reformës, e cila në vijat përgjithshme mund mblidhet në 3 shtylla kryesore. Shtylla e parë ishte ishte qeverisja e gjyqësorit. Qeverisja e gjyqësorit në Shqipëri ka qenë për herë problematike dhe shpeshherë e akuzuar për mbështetje në kritere politik të karrierës apo për zgjedhjes së gjykatave, sidomos atyre të larta. Për këtë shkak, i cili përbën një nga arsyet jo të vogla të uljes besimit të njerëzve tek drejtësia, u pranuan disa zgjidhje të veçanta të cilat anashkalojnë të paktën në kuptimin institucional dhe ligjor influencën e politikës në emërimin dhe karrierën e gjyqtarëve dhe prokurorëve. Sidomos këtë shfaqje dukshëm në dy gjykatat e larta, dy gjykatat kryesore të vendit, siç është gjykata e lartë, në cilën influenca e politikës tashmë është zero, dhe një pjesë të rëndësishme të numrit gjykatës kushtetuese. Qeverisja e gjyqësorit është organizuar e pavarur dhe ndarë për gjyqtarët në vete dhe prokurorët në vete. Kjo është shtyllatar reformës së ndërmarrjes. Shtylla e dytë lidhet me procesin e verifikimit të integritetit tërësor të gjyqtarëve dhe prokurorëve, duke filluar nga integriteti moral, profesional apo marrëdhënien me publikun. Kjo shtyllë është prej ngjarjeve më të veçanta që kanë ndodhur mbase në sistemet juridike europiane, dhe Shqipëria adoptoi këtë jo vetëm për të rritur besimin e publikut tek drejtësia, por edhe për ta përdorur si ilaç, do thoya, unë preferoj të përdor termin ilaç në mënyrë që drejtësia të kurohej dhe të shëndoshej. Dhe sigurisht brenda këtij sistemi ka edhe një lloj nevoje për të goditur elementin e korruptuar që ka manovruar në numër jo të vogël brenda sistemit. Ky sistem, siç është sistemi i vlerësimit apo vettingu i famshëm, është konceptuar i tillë që çdo gjyqtar e prokuror të kalojë përpara komisioneve quasi gjyqësore do i përshkruen dhe të paraqesë tërë problematikat apo mbështetjen që ai ka apo në raportet me punën që ka bërë, në raportet me pasuritë të formuara e tjera. Do është një sistem jo fort i thjesht, jo fort i përkrahur nga të gjithë të interesuarit pranë drejtësisë, por i mbështetur fort nga publiku i cili dëshiron me të vërtetë një gjyqësor të ndershëm. Dhe kjo besoj ka qenë, si thua, në argumentet më i fortë për ta mbajtur në këmbë këtë shtyllë të dytë të reformës. Shtylla e tretë është ajo profesionale, pasandaj që ka në brendësitë saj ndryshime thelbësore në procedurat përkatëse, procedurë penale, procedurë civile dhe në disa ligje organike që lidhen me institucionet siç është institucioni i prokurorit në tërësi. Reforma, sidomos në fushën penale, ka qenë dhe ajo shumë e thellë, do të thoja, përkatje ka arritur edhe në balancimin apo në ndryshim fort të sistemin ndjekjes penale, por gjithsesi ka ruajtur konturin e përgjithshëm që prokurori është përgjegjës për të dhe llogaridhënia e tij referon tek gjykata. Kjo është, si thua, një përshkrim, një kornizë shumë e përgjithshme asaj që ka ndodhur gjatë këtyre viteve lidhur me reformën në drejtësi. Çfarë hyn shkolla e magjistraturës tek sistemi miratuar? Ne në pikë së parë duhet të theksoj që kemi qenë pedagogët e shkollës në të shumtën e tyre kanë qenë autorët kryesorë të reformës. Duke filluar nga ajo e kushtetuese, që pak a shumë u përmend, deri tek ligjet kryesore të vendit penale apo të karakterit civil e administrativ. E para, dyta është që me dispozita kushtetuese të miratura, duke mbajtur parasysh nevojën për një gjyqësor profesional në të kundërt me kritikat e gjyqësorit të mëparshëm, është konceptuar që shkolla e magjistraturës është rruga e vetme nëpër cilën duhet kalojnë personat për të bërë gjyqtarë prokuror. Tashmë gjyqtarë prokuror në Shqipëri nuk mund të bëhesh dot më nëse nuk ke mbaruar shkollën e magjistraturës. Kjo është si thua një element kyç që jep rëndësi decisive shkollës së magjistraturës në raport me të ardhmen e gjyqësorit. Sigurisht e ardhmen e gjyqësorit, të gjithë këtu e dim se jemi profesionistë, nuk është se varet thjesht vetëm nga aftësitë njohuritë profesionale, varet edhe nga sidomos edhe nga integriteti moral i cili nuk është se formohet thjeshtësisht në shkollë, por gjithsesi detyrat e kësaj shkolle janë decisive. Duke filluar që nga sistemi i rekrutimit të gjyqtarëve, studentëve, kandidatëve për magjistrat, gjyqtar e prokuror, tek modifikimi i thellë që kemi bërë programeve të trajnimeve në shkollë, qoftë të trajnimit fillestar, qoftë të trajnimit vazhdues, deri tek merita në vlerësimin e tyre. Gjithashtu kemi adoptuar dhe një sistem të verifikimit paraprak të kandidatëve që hyn në shkollë, i cili na mundëson të kemi një siguri probabilisht të pranueshme që kandidatët për gjyqtarë e prokuror të kenë reputacion dhe integritet të pranueshëm për të zhvilluar më pas si gjyqtarë e prokuror. Këto janë pak a shumë pikat e takimit të shkollës sonë me sistemin e ri. Pastaj e vazhdueshme e kësaj shkolle, e cila dhe me këtë e mbyll, është që ka një program të detajuar dhe të mirë formuar për trajnimin vazhdues. Trajnimi vazhdues është bërë i detyrueshëm për gjyqtarët e prokurorët e praktikës dhe bëhet vetëm nga shkolla e magjistraturës. Kjo është pika që na mbledh pastaj më tepër me sistemin që vepron, me atë që është në punë, dhe këtu kemi, si thua, të gjithë kontaktet, mbështetjet, qoftë edhe këtë projektit për cilin jemi duke folur, të gjithë asistencën e partnerëve që dëshirojnë dhe synojnë që gjyqësori i Shqipërisë i këtij vendi të jetë i përmirësuar dhe në përputhje me standardet ku duhet arrijë. Këto ishin ato që unë mund të thoja lidhur me të gjithë problematikën që do diskutohet në këtë panel. Ju falenderoj edhe një herë për ftesën e mundësi që më dha dhe ju kërkoj ndjes që më duhet të largohem përpara kohë.
Okay, no problem. Thank you very much for keeping up the time schedule. As we're a little bit behind, I would ask immediately Natasha Gabra-Damjanovska to start her speech. 10 minutes, please. Thank you.
Да, ќе се трудам да го почитувам времето. Пред се благодарам и поздрав на сите колеги, посебно на министерот за правда, на неговата екселенција Дирки Јан Коп, но исто така и на моите колеги од правосудните академии од Албанија, Србија, господин Аркипи Вујовиќ и се разбира на универзитетските професори, идејните генератори на овој проект и другите истражувачи колеги. Задоволство ми е што денешниот настан е во насока на отпочнување на овој проект, кој што е поддржан од Холандскиот фонд за регионално партнерство МАТРА и кој ќе биде имплементиран, како што сите знаеме, од Институтот за демократија во соработка со Центарот за правосудни истражувања во Србија и Иницијативата за правни и територијални истражувања на Албанија, се разбира и нашата академија. Морам да нагласам дека искуството на нашата академија е изворедно по однос на соработката со програмот МАТРА. Ние веќе имавме реализирано еден 3-годишен проект кој што беше посветен на судската пракса и кој што произведе интересна едиција по однос на пресудите на Европскиот суд за човекови права, кој што после како литература служеше за практичната работа на нашите лица лица кои што работат во правосудните органи. Сепак тема е на нашата денешна дискусија судската култура, која сама по себе, мораме да си признаеме, широка тема, методолошки е тешко да се опфати, ќе видиме како тоа проектот ќе успее да го направи. Знаеме дека уфаќа цел спектар на аспекти кои треба да се земат предвид, но истовремено е можнебитна, бидејќи е директен индикатор за тоа колка е довербата и перцепцијата на јавноста во правосудниот систем и во врска со работата на судиите. Судската култура исто така е отсликана во судската етика, која ги опфаќа моралните правила, односно норми за постапување и однесување на припадниците на правничката професија при извршување на нивните професионални должности. Сега во изминатиот период сведоци сме, според она кое што го живееме како општество, на бројни критики во однос на независноста на судството, што како состојба и перцепција секако дека би морало да се коригира, бидејќи токму преку правораздавањето се огледува дали во некоја држава постои вистинско владење на правото. Генералната слика води кон заклучок дека не постои јавно искажана и видлива определеност на судиите за соочување и справување со критиките во врска со притисоците и влијанијата кои се смета дека може да доаѓаат од моќни извори, а не само од јавноста, како што судската фела некој пат тврди, но постои недостаток на видлива вклученост во процесот на градење доверба со сопствени конкретни предлози. Значи, потребно е малце проактивно учество на судиите во оваа насока. Можно е важно реформскиот процес и во нашата држава, верувам и во другите две држави партнери во овој проект, реформскиот процес да не забавува, развојната линија постојано да е нагорна, значи да напредува и успешно да ги таргетира и ремедира воочените проблеми. Знаеме дека судијата се очекува дека активно треба да поддржува и да дава пример за судска независност, како во однос на индивидуалните, така и во однос на институционалните аспекти кои што неговото работење ги покрива. Судијата мора да ја врши судската функција независно, врз основа на лична оцена на фактите и во согласност со сопственото разбирање на правото и примена на законот, без оглед на било какви надворешни влијанија, предубедувања, притисоци, закани, мешања од било која страна и било која причина. Судијата со своето однесување како во судот, така и надвор од судот, придонесува за одржување, односно подобрување на довербата кај јавноста за правната професија и се разбира доверба кон странките во непристрасноста на работењето негово и на судството генерално. Судијата мора да внимава кога тој треба да се изземе, кога не е во можност да донесе непристрасна одлука по одреден предмет, односно да внимава да не остави впечаток дека не е во состојба непристрасно да суди. Судијата исто така мора да го почитува етичкиот кодекс, да се однесува безпрекорно од гледна точка на било кој разумен наблюдувач, затоа што однесувањето на судијата како во професионалниот, така и во приватниот живот ја потврдува довербата на луѓето во интегритетот на судството. Тука има бројни димензии на кои што не би сакала дополнително да навлегувам. Овие теми се долго цел на меѓународните организации за кои што мораме да истакнеме дека веќе имаме некоја нормативна рамка или документацијска рамка која што може овој проект и сигурно ќе ја следи, како например бенгалорските начела на Обединетите нации, актите и мислењата кои што ги продуцираше консултативниот совет на европските суди, почнувајќи од Магна картата и другите советодавни мислења, потоа други советодавни тела на Советот на Европа, Греко комитетот со неговите препораки врзани за судството и така натаму. Тука морам да истакнам дека и Греко комитетот препорачува континуирано образование и усовршување на правните професионалци токму на овие теми што се тема на овој проект. Верувам дека емпириското истражување на овој проект ќе ги даде веќе основните контури врз база на кои ќе се концептираат идните насоки препораки на нашите правосудства, Повторно ќе кажам, методолошки може би ќе биде тежок предизвикот, но верувам дека успехот на оваа идеја и на квалитетот на идните препораки ќе бидат многу вредни за идниот прогрес на нашите општества. Пожелувам многу успех, не би сакала да должам понатаму. Сигурна сум дека дел од проектните елементи ќе бидат опфатени од нашите истражувачи кои следат подоцна во програма. Благодарам.
Ви благодарам, директорке, и не може проектот да биде успешен без вашето учество. Тоа е една работа која што е сигурна. Фала ви уште еднаш. So the third one to speak is Nenad Vujic, the director of the Judicial Academy from Serbia. Господин Vujic, имате збор. 10 минути. Фала.
Thank you for invitation, and it's glad to see you. I hope in the near future we see each other in vivo or in a person. Thank you for Dutch or Netherlands now, not Holland, embassy for support of this project. We are glad to participate in a project because we are now in a process of preparing for the transformation of the Academy, because the procedure of the adoption of the new amendments on the Serbian constitution is expected to be initiated, because we finish election and these things, and now we expect the continuation of the process. Venice Commission, they gave the positive opinion of the amendments, and especially it's important for us because the Venice Commission emphasized the need to include the provision on the Judicial Academy in a constitution, which is what Serbia did in a proposed in an amendment, because it's a necessary, because in according with the proposed amendments on a Serbian constitution, in the future the judges and the prosecutor, deputy prosecutors, will be elected only from among the graduates of the academy, which means it's a big responsibility front of academy to prepare the candidates for judges and prosecutor position. Of course, today we have this so-called parallel or both way access in a judiciary. It's through the academy and people who have some certain experience, but without any kind of initial training program and these things. We're thinking about modality in the future, to use experience in France, in Netherlands, because now we study the experience from Netherlands, not only because they are donor of that project, but because the solution, it's very close to our solution and how we view some future. Related to the independence in a judiciary, it's important, and this project, it's really welcome, because for us it's important in a near future when we start the changes law after the amendments. We must change the law about judges, counsel, prosecutors, academy, and it's highly important in a future law implement the mechanism for protection of the independence, but in the same time guarantees for independence in a judiciary, and of course the mechanism for responsibility. Because independence, they must be linked to the responsibility, and because the greater degree of the independence means the greater responsibility. And I hope, and I see the people who participate of this kickoff meeting, and I know some of you. It's a highly professional and with a very good knowledge and experience. For us, it's useful if we have a good quality of analysis and some good recommendation, because in the coming years, we expect to change the law. And what I mentioned, we want include in a law guarantees for independence and for responsibility, because for a judiciary, it's a highly important these facts if we want to have a rule of law implemented on a good way and in a good direction. And especially it's important confidence of the society in a judiciary. This is one of the reasons why we always fight and force this merit-based system access to the judiciary, because if you have this clear criteria, merit-based system for accessing a judiciary, it's highly important to public and the society to know who is elected and how some person became to be judge or prosecutor. But in the same time, we must present to the young lawyers how you became to be judge or prosecutor. Because here in Serbia, but I think probably it's the same in a region, according to some research, among the 10 young students, only 2, they have a plan to start to work in a judiciary. 8 of these 10, they want to go in a consultant firm or to work in a notary office, public bailiff office, and these things. This is one of the reasons why we, like Academy, fight for this clear procedure access to the judiciary, because the people, they must know what they must work, not be member of some parties or have a connection, but according to his knowledge, how they became to be judge or prosecutor. This is one of the crucial and the basic facts if we want to speak about independence. And of course, to care about independence, develop the guarantees for independence and responsibility, and of course, a mechanism to protect the independence and impartiality of judiciary. This is a crucial if you want to speak about. And of course, for us, it's nice to see you, and we are very glad to participate in a project, in a way what we have under our jurisdiction. Of course, we have some specific between school about our area of responsibility and jurisdiction, but it's a small difference. Basically, all of our school, we actually fight for this knowledge-based system and this proper selection in judiciary. Thank you for invitation, and I hope I keep my time, and I'm still in a time framework. It's nice to see you again, and of course, I hope we will have a chance to see each other in Belgrade or in Skopje or in Tirana to discuss between us some other things. Thank you.
Hvala puno. So yeah, this project, this kickoff conference was envisaged to be organized in Skopje, but because of the circumstances, we had to do it like this. There are workshops in each of the 3 capitals. So hopefully, with the vaccine coming soon, we will have the opportunity to travel around in a more safely, let's say, environment and see organized events physically. Thank you very much again. We're a little bit behind the agenda. I will ask the professors, our partners, to each one of them elaborate a bit more on how to bridge the gap between the formal processes and informal practices which shape the judicial culture, and reflect upon the situation in their respective countries. We're going to start with North Macedonia, and I would ask also Denis to give a little bit of introduction of the project and project outputs, but very briefly, so we can have more time for Q&A. So if you pack everything up in 8 minutes, we will be grateful. This counts for everyone else. We have a workshop tomorrow, so guys, you will have the opportunity to speak more. Denis, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Zoran. It's a great pleasure that I could greet you and I could address this kickoff conference. And at this unfortunate turn of events for our country, so when it comes to North Macedonia's integration process and the, I could easily say, unneighborly-like conduct by one member state, actually leads to circumstances under which national efforts need to be further strengthened. And the importance of the support of individual members increases significantly. So it is also in this area, especially in this area of rule of law, that is the judiciary and judicial reforms, which is so much very high on the agenda actually, and so much importance is given to it by the European Union and European Commission. It is here that also we could see the relevance and the importance of the keynote speakers today, the directors, but also of the respective judicial academies and their support for the project, but also the importance of the continuous commitment of the Ministry of Justice and the respective Minister Bojan Maricic for his efforts to introduce a new round of judicial reforms, or to continue the previous rounds of judicial reforms and implement the strategy, in our case for judicial reforms, as well as His Excellency, the Ambassador of the Kingdom of Netherlands in Macedonia, for the continuous and generous support that the Kingdom of Netherlands is providing to the region and to our country, to North Macedonia, which is clearly recognized and greatly appreciated, as well as the support of the Rule of Law Regional Network that recognized the importance of the topic and of the idea behind and the goals behind the project itself. So it is very important that we had also the 3 directors providing their own views on the state of art of judicial culture, and it is of high importance to have them on board and their support for the achievement of the main goals and objectives of the project. I'm very thankful that they addressed at this kickoff event and this opening event. And I would like to continue with a brief overview on the basic ideas and goals and the reasons why we have chosen to address the issue of judicial culture and the issue of Europeanization of judicial culture, as this is the shortened version of a very long title of our project. And to briefly describe what will be ahead of us within this project in the next 2 years. First of all, obviously the sustainability of judicial reforms, as well as the quality of justice, is something that has become a great challenge also within the European Union. And obviously with its experience so far, certain lessons have not been learned by the European Commission, unfortunately, as they relied too heavily on the so-called anatomical approach, solely focusing on formal rules and institutions, which has led to circumstances under which frequently the outputs matter more than outcomes, and means are more important than ends in the process of judicial reforms within the overall process of European integration. This has eventually led to certain lack of sustainability of judicial reforms and a decrease in certain cases in the quality of justice. And certain lessons obviously have not been learned, since we have a certain backsliding of rule of law in some of the member states. And that's why this project addresses this basically a gap that occurred also from this part of the European integration process. Because essentially the adoption of reforms introducing completely new rules and institutions without a parallel process of transformation of culture risks to be useless and even worse in certain cases to produce adverse effects. It is not only Poland and Hungary, unfortunately, which are, of course, the prime examples that could be drawn for the backsliding of rule of law. It is also in certain other countries of Central and Eastern Europe where we can see this type of backsliding when it comes to the sustainability of judicial reforms and the rule of law agenda in general. So we obviously are faced with a paradoxical situation or a phenomenon under which we have arguably achieved independent judiciaries, however, with dependent judges. This means essentially that the culture of independence and judicial autonomy has not been deeply entrenched or ingrained in the culture, in the respective judicial culture of these countries. And if this is the case in Central and Eastern European member states, or some of them at least, within the European Union, this is even more troublesome when it comes to the Western Balkans and the importance provided to the reforms or the Europeanization of judicial culture. And certain changes, adaptation that need to be made in this regard are even more important and required within these times. So the European Commission came to recognize this reality and addressed it in several important documents lately by stating what has been stated also by both the Minister Maricic and the Ambassador, that essentially strengthening the rule of law is not only an institutional issue, but it requires societal transformation. The latest instance in which the European Commission, in its main communication from the European package to the European Parliament in October 2020, essentially directly made a reference to judicial culture in the Western Balkans and draw a certain criticism about the slow pace of change. This is the first instance in which the European Commission has directly referred to judicial culture. Nevertheless, within this document, judicial culture is perceived mainly through the external threats and potential political pressures from authorities on judiciary overall and judicial independence, without really drawing the attention towards the internal aspects of judicial reforms and necessary changes of judicial culture. In order to go straight forward to the main goals of the project, and one of the main goals of the project is to draw a certain definition and to make this a notion of judicial culture, which is only at a first glance, a more academic or theoretical concept or notion, to bring a practical dimension to it and to provide enough resources and outputs that will clearly indicate the practical aspects of judicial culture and what needs to be changed within our respective countries for us to have more sustainable judicial reforms and more entrenched culture of judicial independence, which will essentially and inevitably lead to a higher level of quality of justice thus providing a higher level of confidence, which is a public confidence in general, which is essential towards the judicial independence and proper functioning of judiciary and of the overall political and legal system in the country. So in addressing this main goal, we have clearly recognized that judicial culture is basically the embedded features of the system structures that shape the way in which the work of a judge is performed and valued within a particular legal system. Thus, in this manner, judicial culture within this project focuses more on the institutional context within which judges operate and the particular way in which they perform their tasks. As Marko Troshanovski mentioned previously at the very beginning, we're focusing on 4 separate dimensions or aspects of judicial culture, which are also pertinent issues to which the European Commission continuously draws the attention to. So we are trying to provide a horizontal initiative besides complementing the vertical initiative by the European Commission on the Europeanization of the legal system and the overall reforms within the judiciary, to provide actually a new dimension and provide the substantive standards that needs to be addressed by the European Commission within this project. So the 4 dimensions are related to, of the judicial culture, are related to, first of all, the general issue of the role of judges in developing the law, judicial self-governance and post-socialist judicial culture, and to which extent these are compatible with one another, the role of higher courts in securing uniform application, and the importance of judicial independence of individual judges. In the case of North Macedonia, these problems, or the problems occurring around these particular dimensions, have become more than obvious, even though we were the first country to start with the EU-induced judicial reforms already in 2005. So we have an experience of 15 years, and we are one of the examples in which we can see the shortcomings and weaknesses of certain approaches by the European Commission towards judicial reforms. And in this sense, we have seen that the importance of the changes of adequate changes, adaptations of judicial culture are crucial towards the sustainability of judicial reforms, because we were, especially at the very beginning, the poster child when it comes to the implementation of EU-led judicial reforms. So that's why we are addressing these issues, which are shared also by the other countries within the project, that is Albania and Serbia, on which issues my dear colleagues Fioralba and Tanasie will further discuss, I believe. So on this note, I thank you very much for your attention.
Hvala Denis. Tanasie, ti si sljedeći, tako da floor is yours.
Thank you, Zoran. Denis is the head of the project, so he can speak as much as he likes. How much time do I have? So I can start my stopwatch.
Yes, start 8 minutes.
Good.
Hopefully you will end less than 10.
Okay. Hello everybody, Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Minister, ladies and gentlemen. It's an immense privilege to be able to be on this project and to address you today at this kickoff conference. I would like to thank Denis for initiating this project and for having me on board. And I would also like to thank Nenad Vujic, the director of the Serbian Academy of Judiciary, for accepting to take part in this kickoff conference and for giving us really substance in his speech with respect to some of the issues that we will definitely have to tackle within this project. These thankings are not just conventional. Within these now 7 minutes that I have, I will try to pinpoint why the culture is important in bridging this gap that you have mentioned, Zoran, between the law in action and the law in books. If there was this disillusionment and disappointment with the process of democratization and rule of law transition which occurred after the fall of the Berlin Wall, it is exactly because we didn't take into account in the Eastern Europe and also the Western Europe with its mechanisms within the European Union as well, didn't take into account the context within which these changes were supposed to take place. So what were the historical and sociological preconditions within which we wanted to establish the institutions and mechanisms which were exported from Western Europe as they have shown good results in terms of the progress of those societies. So there are no sufficient words to stress the importance of multidisciplinarity, both in humanities and within our context in the legal sciences and political sciences, and even more in the legislation and policy making. There is no hope for success, there is no hope for a proper science without taking into account the results and achievements of the neighboring disciplines and neighboring sciences. And here we speak of history, sociology, as those fundamental sciences which help us understand legal concepts properly. And there are no proper legal borrowings and constitutional borrowings. They will never give expected results if you don't take into account the particularities of the society within which those new institutions are supposed to take place. And I'll give you immediately an example from a safe distance from the 19th century, when Serbia adopted its first constitution in 1835. The comments of the British ambassador was that it was a French garden within the Ottoman woods. So we adopted a constitution based on the heritage of the French Revolution, but within the context which was completely different. So how does cultural help in this respect? Why does culture actually matter? Well, there are two positions. The central conservative truth is that it is the culture which defines the society, not the politics. So the society depends on what its culture is. The other opposite position is the liberal central tenet, which would say that actually through good politics we can change the society, and we can basically, changing the culture, you can improve the society. So we are stuck between these two different opposing positions. One say that the culture is an independent variable, that it is just an explanatory variable. The other says that culture is a dependent variable and that you can actually influence it. I think that our societies, and they're very well chosen, actually point very well to the importance of taking into both perspectives into account. And again, I will take an example of Serbia. Serbia, again, from a safe distance, 19th century. It made a huge leap. It made a huge leap from a Ottoman province in the beginning of the 19th century to a more European than Ottoman country in the beginning of the 20th century. How was that possible? It wasn't possible just because Serbs stayed and were left to themselves. It was possible because the Serbs who were living in Austria, which we call Nemačkari in a pejorative sense, came to Serbia, to the once upon a time Ottoman Serbia, and they started implementing the knowledge in the field of rule of law, in the field of political institutions, in the field of legal education. And in that way, we were able to not bridge the gap, but actually to narrow that gap. So this shows that culture is important, that what is the meaning of culture? We will discuss it tomorrow. And we will discuss also the relevant legal concepts. What is rule of law? what is a judge as an agent of rule of law, what is judiciary as a power, a branch of government. What is sufficient to say at this point that the culture is actually means the view in this context, the views, the attitudes, the beliefs which determine the behavior of the judges in the given legal system and actually define how the judge will apply an institution which is the same, if you want, in Serbia and in France, but it will be applied differently in the two countries. So to wrap up in 1 minute more, the value of this project is actually in the bridging of this gap which existed for a very long time between the cultural studies, and which was neglected in the legal sciences and political sciences, but more legal in this context. So to bridge this gap between the cultural studies and the policy making, so the managing of development policies, and to help guide these policies better on the basis of our knowledge of what the culture is in the given societies. Thank you.
Hvala ti, Tanasija. I like this from a safe distance, but you know, we're in the Balkans, so you never know what is a safe distance. We thought that we have a safe distance vis-a-vis other stuff, but obviously it keeps on coming to us in our EU accession process. But never mind. Thank you, Tanasija. Before giving the floor to Fioralba Caka, I just wanted to invite the participants to pose questions in the chat area. We would not have a lot of time to discuss them. We already have 2 questions. Please feel free to ask other questions. If we are not able to answer you directly here on this kickoff conference, we can provide you with answers immediately after the conference. On that note, Fioralba, please take the floor, 8 minutes.
Thank you, Zoran. I would first of all like to thank all the panelists that already took the floor in explaining important reform EU-driven processes and also interesting aspects of the judicial culture in the country. Also, I'd like to thank Denise for the concept of this research project, which I call it both ambitious and very interesting, and also novatory for our region. With regards to the topic, it's a very broad topic, and it's very hard for me to really stick to the minutes, but I'll make my best. Both my colleagues spoke about the importance on developing a European judicial culture in our countries that reflects upon European values. I'll start by noting that it is important for our countries in our justice reforms to reflect EU values and not to have just merely transplanted laws, transplanted institutions, but to have a real change in the culture of the judiciary. And this is not important just for the Albanian people or the Macedonian and the Serbian people, but as a EU law professor, I'd like to say that the change of judicial culture in the Balkans is important for EU itself. We have into consideration that once we enter the European Union, despite what is happening now with countries blocking each other and so on, but we have the perspective of joining EU one day, the judges of the Western Balkans would be European judges. And they will be European judges when they apply EU law. So it is important that they have a very good understanding of the European law in terms of procedural law and also material law, and also values. Every judge in Albania and so on should in the future know how to refer to the Court of Justice, how to use Article 267 of preliminary ruling, where to refer an act or not refer it based on the doctrine of the act clair or eclair, or the seal fit criteria, or should know the Kobler case when a judge is compromising its national system and also EU law by withdrawing a case or referral in the ECJ. So from the procedural part of, or point of view, having values in our countries that somehow implement EU law is important for EU itself, as our judges would be European judges. But also in terms of the application of EU law, it's important that our judges change the culture or understand EU law, both in terms of practices, precedents, knowledge, and also values. What is the concern? The concern is that something similar to what happened in the Central European countries might happen also in the Western Balkan countries. If we refer to the literature and to research, we see that the judiciary-driven reform in the Central European countries were kind of superficial and unable to change the culture, the judicial culture of the Central European countries who joined in 2004. If we refer to the literature, and I would refer to the words of some authors, the strong political commitment of European integration of the Central European candidates, especially the national judiciaries, proved to be poorly methodologically equipped to face the burden of EU legal integration, and they were characterized by textual positivism, primitive positivism, reluctance towards a binding legal precedent, lack of knowledge and ability, mechanical jurisprudence, rudimentary descriptive approach towards the study and application of legal norms, ignorance towards persuasive arguments and soft laws, disregard of comparative law, and few other cultural traits that the Central European judiciary showed during and after the accession, which are considered to endanger the European legal integration. So the question I pose is, do we have the same risk? The words are very strong. If we see there are lots of critics about the judicial culture of the Central European countries in respect to the EU practices and EU law. Shall it happen the same in our region? So this is my main concern and question. And what is the legal culture in our region, and especially in Albania? What are the main characteristics of the legal and judicial culture? When you talk about judicial culture, Denise paved the way by citing John Bell about the shape and the features that shape the judiciary. And also Ellen Meck would further develop this notion of the features that somehow characterize the judicial decision-making by analyzing three aspects of the judicial culture. One is the legal culture, the other is the ethical culture, and the third is the institutional culture. I would stop very shortly to explain the legal culture in Albania. If we go back to history, the legal culture in Albania started back in the 4th century with the creation of the Illyrian state. But after 2 centuries of having our own state, we were occupied by the Roman Empire for other 6 centuries. And both the customary Illyrian law together with the Roman law coexisted. Then in 395, we fell under the Byzantine Empire. So 3 kind of legal systems were cooperating in the country, which were the Byzantine codified law under Theodosius and then Justinian. And then we had the canonic religious law and Albanian customary law. And after somehow in the medieval time, we developed shortly our national city statutes, which were independent both from Roman or Byzantine law. Even those independent statutes of the cities that governed Shkodra or Durrës or other principalities, independent principalities in Albania, had borrowed features from the Italian law. And studies show that even these independent statutes, which we had during the medieval times, were drafted with the help of Benedict. So there was not an indigenous or, let's say, real Albanian legal culture being developed because we were all the time during the occupations. And even the Skanderbeg state or the other embryos of state we had didn't have a long existence in developing a legal culture or judicial culture because they were always followed by occupation. So in 1394, we fell under the Ottoman Empire. And again, those few legal norms, Albanian legal norms, had to somehow coexist with Sharia and the judicial system, which was imposed by the Ottoman Empire. And I refer here the Qadi, which was the judge appointed by the Ottoman empires. So the judicial system during the occupation was seen as a system which was imposed by foreigners, which did not reflect our customs or attitudes or moral values, but rather it was a system imposed by the foreigners. And the only resistance we had in confrontation with the system imposed by abroad was by developing our customary codes and by developing the so-called elderly courts based on kinship, on families who would somehow judge in specific regions. After Albania declared independence from the Ottoman empires, from 1912 till 1939, we had the most glorious, let's say, period of legal development and also judicial development, because it was independent and it was based on national tradition as the jury system based on the elderly courts and so on. But again, during this period where the modern Albanian state was conceived, we still borrowed from the French, Italian, and Belgian constitution and also code of procedure, the best practices. Then we had communism with all the common features, which I'm sure we're going to study tomorrow. And after communism, we had a long transition in democracy. Why did I make a so long expose of the legal history in Albania? Because it has embedded in our culture. If we see the legal culture in Albania, it is based on a frequent change of laws. Because even on those times where we were an independent state, laws were continuously changing. Secondly, we can somehow see that Albania is very prone in accepting legal norms coming from abroad, or it's very keen in borrowing laws. And maybe this is because during centuries, we were somehow imposed of borrowing legal system, of being in the position of transplanting legal systems. And for us, it comes somehow, I don't know, maybe naturally to impose from others rather than develop our own roots of legal culture. Also, the problem is that on one side we have in legislation frequent changes, borrowing from other countries, transplanting other systems, and when we see it at the judicial culture level, we don't see much of exchange, we don't see much of comparative analysis, and we do not see an Albanian judicial ideology. And by judicial ideology, I understand natural ways of interpreting law, of developing law, using somehow different methods of interpretation. We copy-paste somehow foreign decisions, or somehow we copy-paste foreign practices, but without reflecting it in the proper solution of the case. Yes, I'm at the final comment. Okay. Since judiciary was somehow seen as a transplant or occupational, let's say, system, there was always poor support for the judiciary in Albania. And there were poor support by the citizens, and there was lack of trust in this institution. And this has characterized the judiciary for so long. Another feature is the low self-perception of judges. Because in different times of history, judges were not able to be independent, impartial, and develop their own ideologies. The self-perception of judges in our country is low. And this is another feature that our culture somehow, let's say, reflects. Corruption of the judiciary, something that have started maybe in the Ottoman Empire with the Qadi, which was sometimes corrupted to render a service, has accompanied our culture of corruption for so long. So even at the ethical aspect, we see lack of integrity or corruption as features for a long time in the Albanian culture. And the third level, the institutional dimension, since we didn't have the space to develop our legal and culture, judicial culture, we see lack of management in our judiciary, lack of case management, a lengthy procedure, And also, we see a lack sometimes of the execution of decision of the courts, which was made also a problem at the European Court of Justice. There are lots of features we can discuss about the Albanian judicial culture, but I see it linked with our legal history and also legal culture. And I very much appreciate this.
We will do more.
Yes, I very much appreciate this project because there is a lack of research in the field. I think it's one of the first study who's going to study the culture of judiciary in a country and draw some solutions of horizontal mechanism to change the problematic feature of our culture and to reflect the European values of judiciary and also to pave the way of European reforms in the country.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Tsaka. I have received one question which goes in the direction of what are our outcomes. So I will read it out loud, and maybe Dennis, you can reflect shortly on the question, and we need to finish. So the question is what the project suggests as the most appropriate ways and manners to change mentality and change the culture, judicial culture. Dennis, 5 minutes max, please.
No, okay. I'll try to be as brief as possible. Please don't mind us. You know, we are academic staff and professors. We are set on 45 minutes, so it's very difficult to wrap up everything in 10 minutes. Please don't mind for being a bit longer. And anyhow, it's a very interesting question, and it is a question that we have foreseen in the project. Absolutely, I agree. It's very difficult. It's actually the most difficult part to change the mentality and culture. You know, it's much easier to establish institutions and to introduce and enact new laws as the EU or in the international community sees it best in the best manner they perceive it. However, when it comes to implementation, this is the common problem of all our countries here. And of course, culture and mentality is not prone to change really through formal rules or institutions. We have to address it and approach it through different manners as well. And as we can see also from the experience of certain Central and Eastern European countries, which have and to some extent still share some of the traits of the so-called remnants of the socialist legal tradition, which are persistently existing within these legal cultures. Some of them were mentioned by Fioralba as well. Actually, it's to address them through education. That's why we have decided to have as our main beneficiaries, our main partners, institutional partners, the respective judicial academies, because we're trying to address this issue through an incremental change and adaptation. It cannot happen, and it will not happen. We cannot expect it to happen overnight. It will be a very long process. And even this project, a 2-year project, will only initiate this phase of change and adaptation. So it is mainly through legal education above all, future judges, that we are trying to address certain shortcomings and weaknesses of the existing judicial culture in our country, and try through this process of training and education to internalize these European values that will enable our judiciary to better cope with this European mandate that was mentioned by Fioralba. But not only this European dimension, it might seem very distant, this European mandate, to some of our citizens as well as judges, so they would see it as not as a priority in their everyday adjudication work. We also need to address this issue as our internal need to change and reform the judiciary, because we have seen and we perceive time and over again, that the dominant judicial culture and the dominant traits of judicial culture are causing problems of having a proper judicial independence and accountable judiciary. Because it is through this judicial culture that we are either escaping the proper judicial independence or the judicial accountability, which are basically two sides of the same coin. So this is the reason why we have designed the project in this manner, why we include judicial academies, which are responsible for the training, initial and continuous training of judges. By the way, as one of the key institutions on which the European Commission focuses besides the Judicial Council. This institutional anatomical approach of the European Commission basically focuses on these two institutions, and that is the Judicial Council and Judicial Academies. So we are trying to add this horizontal initiative to a vertical initiative of the European Commission to create certain substantive standards over the internalizing of European values when it comes to judicial culture. We have heard today from the respective chairpersons, directors of these academies. I can say from our own experience that we see certain positive changes in this process. And I believe that this project will provide outcomes and outputs that will provide detection, proper detection where the attention and emphasis should be placed, and additionally provide materials with the both theoretical and empirical and practical dimension of judicial culture, which could be easily implemented also within the existing curriculum of the Judicial Academy. So I believe I've managed to wrap it up in several minutes. Thank you.
So what will be the final recommendation to our viewers? So stay tuned, a lot of new and interesting insights will follow during the implementation of this project. I would like to thank with this all the distinguished speakers. Special thanks to the directors of academies for joining us, and we will update you regularly on our products, on our events that are envisaged during this project. So hopefully the next meeting will be with physical presence. And on that note, I would like to thank you all for being here, being present, and discussing this very important issue. Thank you very much, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.